Don't you change that YouTube channel. I see you, millennials. I'm talking 2006, 20 years ago. I see you. I see you. Don't you do it. Hey. Oh yeah, the 2000s were intense, and if you didn't grow up during it, well, you might not understand how insane movies got at a certain point. And it all kind of started in the 90s where the MTVification of movies finally hit, and especially the hyperkinetic, quick-cut editing style that invaded blockbusters. It was the dawn of the World Wide Web, so we were processing information faster, which meant we could process our movies faster. And there's one movie in the 2000s that might exemplify this the best, and that is 2006's Running Scared. A movie that basically made zero splash when it came out, but has since kind of, sort of, maybe, but not really found a cult following since. And if you've never seen this action crime thriller, well, how should I describe it to you? It's kind of like watching a regular movie on meth. Paul Walker plays Joey Gazelle, yes that's his name, a low-level mob hood who is tasked with disposing of a gun after a drug deal goes bad. This gun was used to shoot a dirty cop, so now he and his crew are all in jeopardy. But it's just one of those nights because when he hides the gun, his son's best friend Oleg happens to find it to shoot his abusive piece of shit dad. Now Oleg and the gun are in the wind, and Joey has not just crooked cops and his crew on his ass, but also the terrifying Russian mob. Can Joey find Oleg, find the gun, and save his skin all before the night's up? Director Wayne Kramer, coming off a gentler film, 2003's The Cooler with William H. Macy, pretty much decided to go in the complete opposite direction. The opening of this movie is like a shotgun blast to the face, insofar as the opening drug bust gone bad ends up with a lot of people shotgunned in the face. It's a cacophony of bullets and blood. The violence is captured in beautiful slow-mo, and the cinematography is high contrast, desaturated, in sickly, almost primary colors. It wants to assault you and tell you, hey, this isn't your mama's action film. And in that way, it's also not your mama's Paul Walker performance. He was always kind of a clean-cut guy, a surfer bro, a 2000s response to early 90s Keanu. Except somehow, miraculously, with this movie, Paul Walker comes alive. He comes unleashed. He sheds that clean-cut persona. He's also on a razor's edge the entire movie. It's a desperate character, and Walker walks the fine line between completely losing his mind and keeping his cool. And honestly, it's electric to watch. Kind of like his co-star Vin Diesel that same year with Find Me Guilty, where Diesel showed a lot of shades of charisma and warmth in that performance. We lost a lot of potential when Walker just decided to slum it in Fast and Furious movies. Walker and the supporting players here, including Chaz Palminteri as a crooked cop, and even John Noble from Lord of the Rings as a scary Russian mob boss, they all kind of go full tilt with their performances, just as the movie style threatens to overload us to our breaking point. Director Wayne Kramer also decides to make this a modern update of Grimm's fairy tales. So that means not only do we have crooked cops and mobsters and pimps, but they're also the most ferocious and cartoonish versions of themselves. And that is never more apparent in a side quest where Joey's wife, Teresa, played by Vera Farmiga, has to retrieve Oleg, played by Cameron Bright, that creepy kid who was in every movie in the 2000s, and she stumbles upon an apartment where Oleg has been kidnapped by two demented pedophiles who basically have a Pee Wee Herman-style murder dungeon, and 20 years on from this movie, it's still quite a shocking sequence. Not just because of the content, but because the director decided to go there, and to really give us a child's POV into this adult world of crime and corruption and depravity. The 2000s post 9/11 were kind of the heyday for depravity in mainstream Hollywood film. Obviously, it was the torture porn era for mainstream horror, matching form with content. And that first Saw really made that kinetic, ferocious, and sometimes obnoxious editing and filming style de rigueur for genre films going forward. So you saw that in 2006's The Hills Have Eyes, which was probably as depraved as horror remakes could get at the time and still be released to a wide audience. You had a little more austere style in the indie hard candy, but it still took quite a bit from those films, and almost impressionistic shots that implied more than it showed. and this extended to the action genre, which really leveraged that kineticism, most notably in Jason Statham's Crank, a movie about a guy who's been poisoned and has to keep his heart ticking by any means necessary. From horror to action, these were films whose styles matched their crazy plots. But then there was one auteur from that era who really came into his own, and he combined this trashy aesthetic with more quote-unquote serious films. And that man is Tony Scott, the patron saint of vulgar auteurism. By the 2000s, he pretty much became unleashed with his style. So Tony Scott dabbled in 2001's Spy Game, but by 2004 with Man on Fire, he went full tilt into it. I'm talking action scenes and dialogue scenes intercut with flash cuts, and overcranked shots, and slow-mo, and super bleached high contrast inserts that extended to 2005's Domino, and it also extended to 2006's Deja Vu, pushing it on to this sci-fi crime mindbender with Denzel. But whereas some of these films and the overindulgence of style creates just a big headache, Tony Scott kind of got away with it. Him injecting it into what would basically be tepid generic fare energized it and made those movies in his 2000s run, leading all the way up to his final film, 2010's Unstoppable, way more enjoyable than they had any right to be. And the decade and the style pretty much ended after we lost him. No one from that era or since has done it better. But that's not to say that Running Scared doesn't have its charms because of how outdated the style is now. You could even call it the nu metal era of filmmaking. The rap-rock combo in music that we largely have decided to forget because movies like Running Scared had this hard, almost metal edge to it, combined with this gritty urbanism a la rap and hip-hop. It was not for everyone at the time, and it's way more dated 20 years on. But I gotta admit, in our streaming era, where movies are kind of just limp and really don't focus on style, it is kind of a warm but dirty and filthy and fly-ridden blanket to go back and look at this totally aggro era of filmmaking. But if you're a millennial like me, it sure was a hell of a time. The country was definitely going through it, and our filmmakers were doing anything and everything just trying to catch up. Running Scared is still a wild and shocking action crime thriller 20 years later. It represents the best and the worst of hyperkinetic, over-stylized filmmaking of the 2000s, but that also makes it a heart-racing and blood-pumping relic of the time that probably deserves a bigger cult following. I give Running Scared a respectable 3.5 stars out of 5. If you like this flashback review, please like and subscribe or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. How much of a millennial am I? Well, if we go to the shelf, not only do I have Running Scared on DVD, I have a used Blockbuster version of Running Scared on DVD.